Hi, everyone. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the following podcast belong solely to the host and its contributors. They are not necessarily the views of our employers, organizations, committees, or other group or individual.
I'm David Campbell,
And I am Jordan Bullock.
And I'm Joseph Whitney. This is Brewing with BIM.
where we talk about construction processes, technology, BIM, and beer.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brewing with BIM. As always, I'm your host today, Joe Whitney. And with me is Dave Campbell. What's going on, Dave?
Hey, Joe. Not much. Glad to be back.
Yeah. Especially with today's guests. We've got a crew from literally all around the world today. We couldn't find anybody, interesting worth to talk to in the U.S., so we had to go all the way to Hong Kong. And we've got the folks from IDL BIM, Simon Gallagher, Jake Lucier, and Jason Chong. Why don't you guys jump on and introduce yourselves?
Hello, thanks for having us on. I'm Simon.
And I'm Jake.
Okay, very good. There you go. Yeah, that's us. What would you like to know? We're a bit of a mixed bag. We have a strange crew.
Well, I think strange crews make the best BIM folks, if you ask me. But before we get into, backgrounds and all the fun stuff, we like to start off and ask, what are you drinking, if you're drinking anything at the moment? I know it's a little bit earlier your time.
Yeah, it's about 9 a.m. here. And we started the day with a pineapple lump milk stout from Behemoth Brewing Company, which is out of New Zealand. So it's a pineapple and chocolate stout, which is really great and tasty, especially for breakfast.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Heck yeah.
We got a couple other ones lined up as well.
Strawberry Sundae.
Strawberry Sundae.
City. Yeah, that's a sour one, so we'll have that maybe later. That's from Scotland. That's interesting.
I'm all about the sours. I don't know if I'm on the pineapple stout train, but I think I could give that a try.
It's a weird combination, but it kind of works.
It works really well, guys. It really does. And it helps. It's a, 6.8, 6.9?
Oh,
It's going to make you have a lovely day.
Yeah, right. Oh, man.
Dave, are you drinking anything, my friend?
Yeah, dude, I'm a little sad I'm not drinking anything as good as what they got over there, but I got decided to mix it up a little bit. I did some smoking over the week here, and I wanted to really try to throw some water in there and just leave it in there as I smoked. I think I was smoking a pork shoulder, and then I threw it in the freezer and decided to use that in a Terramana tequila reposado old fashioned. So it's been actually pretty cool. I switched it up from bourbon or whiskey and decided to try a reposado tequila, which is a little bit different, but still I like the smoky taste of it.
Yeah, the tequila old fashioned. That's interesting. Terramana is an interesting brand. I normally stay away from celebrity endorsed alcohol because you're paying for the endorsement, but the Rock put his name on it. It's actually pretty dang good tequila.
It is. I like it. It's good, cheaper kind of tequila, $20-$30 bottle. And it's got a pretty good taste to it. I mean, it's no Clase Azul or 1942, but it's a good sipping tequila.
All right, nice, man. Well, I am lowbrowing it over here. I've got some cheap whiskey. No, not cheap. I've got some decent whiskey here. Just Bullet bourbon. And a little bit of ginger ale to, mellow the color a little bit, just enough to change the color. Nothing fancy.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my go-tos out here is get the Bullet and make a bourbon lemonade or something like that. That's
my gosh.
Here, it's great.
Bourbon lemonade, bourbon and lemons go great together. You know what? Actually, speaking of pineapple, bourbon and pineapple juice goes really well together. I ran out of mixers one week, and I had a bottle of whiskey laying around, and my wife had these cans of pineapple juice that were about to expire. They're probably like 3 weeks away from the use by date or whatever. Cracked one of those open and started mixing it with whiskey, and that's actually a really good flavor combination. Lemonade, though. Lemonade's really good.
Good. So the I got used to on the flights, on the airport, or on a flight, I realized that a lot of times I can get a Jameson and ginger, and that's been my go-to for a little while.
Good call.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we're just this is becoming an AA meeting here in a second. We're like 2 steps away. I guess you got to quit for that to take effect. But let's jump into the goodies. Jake, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, sure. So I started out in the U.S. I was working in Seattle doing retail architecture for a pretty large firm there in the Northwest. And then from there, I switched over to Starbucks, and they have a robust BIM program, and they wanted some help to build their team out in Hong Kong. So I basically signed up for that, came out here. Now it was about 11 or 12 years ago now, and did that for a while. Then joined a consultancy doing VDC. Then did that for a few years. Just wanted to get into bigger scale projects. Then we started up our consultancy, which is Integrated Design, or IDL BIM, here at Hong Kong. We've been running that for the last 7 or 8 years. How about you, Simon?
Yeah, I've got a similar background to Jake in the sense that, but obviously, apart from I'm not American, but apart from that, so I spent my time, cut my teeth in the UK, working in practice, architectural. So my background is, it's a bit of an odd one. My path is not a straight path to BIM. It's really quite indirect. So I went to art college and I ended up doing interior design. And I went from interior design to architecture and then to detailing, structural detailing and stuff like that. So I'm sort of technical. And I spent nearly 15 years in the UK doing that in various practices, working on various projects. Then I moved to Hong Kong about just over 10 years ago. And I didn't have a background in BIM. I wasn't using BIM. I was using the usual CAD tools, but not necessarily BIM. But I did use ArchiCAD. I was using ArchiCAD in about 2002, 2003. Oh, actually,
We won't hold it against you.
It's okay. I really like ArchiCAD, but hardly anywhere uses it. It's quite rare to find a place that actually uses it. And I remember the practice I was working at in about 2004. We had the reps from Autodesk came to see us, and they showed us this new product called Revit, and I was laughing at it, saying, "That's shit. ArchiCAD's way better." and then look what happened. I was like, "That'll never take off." Anyway, so and then I came to Hong Kong about 10 years ago, and had to kind of reinvent myself as a BIM person, because that's what the market wanted. So I spent a few years now working. I work for Atkins in Hong Kong. I work for Mott MacDonald in Hong Kong. So some of the big consultancies who have work in the Middle East and various sort of mega projects. And when you're based out here, everything just turns into a mega project. So the stuff in the UK, it wasn't like small, but it was like, I don't know, 3-4 million UK. For some of the stuff that I was working on myself working on it, and then here it's like, how about 31 billion, and it's a piece of reclamation, and then we're going to build an incinerator on top, and it's like, okay, it's quite different. It's a lot. It's much faster, much faster.
Which construction and design gets done here is unparalleled compared to other places.
It's not necessarily a good thing either. It's good if you want to get paid, I suppose. That's quite good.
I would love to things to speed up around here. It seems like projects take a while to get started and whatnot. Some of those larger names on the engineering side that you mentioned, we've got some insight into projects going on, working with them on some stuff, and various large projects across the U.S. They seem to be everywhere. Big names in just about every territory. It's interesting, Jake. I didn't know that you had came from the Pacific Northwest. Dave and I had spent quite a bit of time out there. I lived there for about 6 or 7 years, and I think I've probably crossed paths with some of your previous employers at some point, I imagine.
Absolutely, and we might even cross paths somewhat ourselves. I don't know, going to some of those events and just networking and just maybe even work together. We just don't even know it. Who knows?
Yeah. That's the funny thing about this industry is it's very vast, but also kind of a small, tight-knit community as well.
Yeah, that BIM crew they're a weird bunch of guys.
No, it's crazy, but even going from the West Coast, and this is kind of just speaking from experience here in the U.S., Even the way that BIM is used here in the U.S. varies on where you are. Like the level of detail they expect, the standards that they adhere to. It's all kind of all over the place. But I've seen that, you know, the UK. What have you guys kind of seen?
For a while here, Hong Kong was practicing what I like to call backwards information modeling. It's still BIM, just a different twist on it. It's all 2D to 3D, and the BIM model lags behind the actual project drawings and the construction drawings or the design, right? And they kind of just use it as we had some BIM on that project, and do a clash test here or there, and say there's a lot of problems, but we'll just sort it out on site with that hammer and cover that up. That mistake's not always going to see that. So that happened for a while, and then Hong Kong started to mandate BIM, and that must have started about
2018. And they didn't start. They just said, right, from a month from now, you're going to do BIM. That was it. He did. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, any project over Hong Kong $30 million, which
you
is
can't dig a
about
hole for that.
5 million, 4 million US.
Yeah, you can't do anything for that in Hong Kong. So it's like it's almost any project.
Yeah, a toilet and a park, that'll be 30 million.
It sounds like LA. Toilet in a park, 30 million. Wow, that's crazy. So the backwards BIM, I like that, by the way. I'm gonna steal that here and use it stateside. We've got quite a bit practicing backwards BIM. And again, it's regional. Pacific Northwest, West Coast, very progressive on the BIM side. You know, if you can spell BIM, you're making well over six figures, and everybody will hire you and whatever. Same thing with some of the larger cities, the New York, the Dallas. But once you get outside of that, you start going a little bit more towards the inland side, Midwest specifically. Outside of Chicago, they seem to be pushing BIM pretty heavy. But say you're Indianapolis, you're Pittsburgh, you're Nashville, it's all backwards BIM, man. Like it's very few and far between when you find somebody that's actually putting forth the effort. And if they are putting forth the effort, it's not coming from the architectural side. It's usually coming from a subcontractor who had to adopt processes for some project and just said, we're going to do this for everything.
Or even a GC, even a general contractor and someone that self-performs. I've seen them adopt BIM because they can start using it for spooling, or they can use it for scheduling. They can use it for tracking, for actual scheduling, and like poor scheduling. There's many different reasons to utilize it.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Self-performing concrete, that's huge, yeah.
Yeah, contractors like it out here for claims, because it's very, very obvious the design, the mistakes that are evident that made it to the construction field, while they put a lot of emphasis on having the contractors sort out a lot on site or during their phase of the project versus having a more robust design. And part of that's because of timeline. Like, designers don't necessarily, or the engineering consultants, they don't necessarily get the proper amount of time that they would need to fully flesh out the design and coordinate it. So they leave a lot of that up to the contractors, and that's where they pick it up and they run with the BIM, and that adds a lot of value. And that's who we primarily do a lot of our work with out here, is the main contractors and the subcontractors. Just doing practical BIM, making models, doing clash tests, running coordination meetings, producing drawings.
We've got a lot of experience of being in these surreal meetings where you're sitting around looking at you're doing a clash summary, and then you've got something on the screen that's like, okay, there's a column sticking through the roof, and then some guy stands up with a photo from site saying, your model's really accurate, it looks just like that on site. It's like, you're not meant to build it, guys.
I think BIM for the further as we get further downstream, it's not just me, everybody thinks this, is probably the most valuable part of it. The architects and the engineers can play BIM all they want, work collaboratively and all that sort of stuff. Where the rubber meets the road and where it gets to be really useful is during the coordination, the clash test, during the subcontractor side of things, where they're actually doing their spool drawings. We're talking 4D, 5D timeliners. We're talking, scanning. All of this feeds into the construction side of BIM, and it makes it really useful there. I'm so used to getting looking at architectural BIM models. I'm doing air quotes here. And really what it is it's fudge dimensions. Oh, don't go off that. Go off the drawing. They edited a Revit dimension somewhere. It's like, well, I can't lay out off this. It's not accurate. You got to go off of the actual the PDF set, not the Revit model.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what like you guys were saying as well. I think there's a certain point, because we've seen it in our industry and it's still here in the US. There's this gap in between design and construction. Whether it's not enough time, it's not enough money, it's not the knowledge of the architect to know how something is built. But at the same time, I feel like we're at a time where we're trying to learn that, but we're also figuring out that the GC or the construction modeler, whoever's going to be taking that portion of it, needs to get involved sooner in the design. Like you guys were saying, as soon as we can make that like a symbiotic relationship to get started sooner, the sooner that we can start working with that data and making it constructible, less time that we have to spend later reworking that entire model. Because I mean, if you think about it, the architectural team works for 6, 8, 12 weeks, whatever it is, to pump out these drawings. And then you got to take that model and those drawings and you got to rework that model for at least 2, 3, 4, maybe another 5 or 6 weeks to make it constructible. I mean, at that
depending on the project size, yeah. The contract types are very limiting in that regard here in the US, at least. And with no mandates, it's really on the owner and on the owner's rep to kind of help drive these conversations. That said, I got to take this time here because you are 12 hours ahead of us and ask you, what you're seeing in the future over there. Is the technology and labor crises that we're, talking about here in the US, are those solved over there with these mandates? Is there more labor or is there less labor? And as well as, in parity with that, the technology side, we see a lot of silos over here. Are you still running into those same issues?
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are not foreign to us. For here, the labor force is aging, and especially on the construction side of it, right? And there's not a lot of new blood coming in and graduates coming into those fields and learning those trades. So BIM has to play a role in filling that gap so that there is less demand for labor on site, whether that means there's more prefabrication happening or there's more coordination, so there's less mistakes. And BIM is playing its role in that, but I think we're seeing very similar cases as the US is with labor shortage here.
Also the skill levels dropping because the skilled operators are leaving the industry and they're not being replaced. And so off-site manufacture, prefabrication helps somewhat because you don't need so much skilled labor on site, which is another thing. I mean, Hong Kong insists on using in-situ concrete, which means you need bar benders, and bar benders, the cost of them keeps going up and up and up. And it's like, rather than say, hey, the cost of bar benders keeps going up and up and up, should we maybe build things in a different way? Nah, we'll just keep on going. We'll just keep doing the same stuff. It'll be fine. No. And then they complain about not enough staff, and it's like, yeah, because you keep doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result, which is the definition of madness.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So with the aging issue is interesting because it's the lack of skill, actually to me equates to age, right? Losing your estimator or whoever, the guy who's, been building a building for 20 years. And even if we were to introduce new skilled labor today, it's still not enough to offset because there's like a 20-year gap where people weren't going to the trades as much as they should have been. We've been pushing college and other paths, but not really looking at these other market segments, these other industries that people should be joining, one, to keep society going and being sustainable. So I think that gap is going to be felt everywhere. I remember when I was in high school, even though I took woodworking and welding and all that sort of stuff, the number one thing is you got to go to college. You don't want to end up as a ditch digger. But at the end of the day, that ditch digger, man, that's great money. Like that's no student loan debt. That's you be a master ditch digger, right? There's a lot of desirability in that. It's just not something that we've been practicing or preaching, at least not here in the States.
Yeah. I think that we got to start relying on technology for that lure, right? Especially to the younger generations. In all honesty, I think BIM is our, kind of our carrot in that sense, because BIM, it can be used in so many different ways, as you guys know. BIM is a toolbox, right? It has so many different tools, so many different ways that it can be utilized. And when you guys were talking about your history with VDC, man, VDC, I mean, just visualizing these 3D buildings. Let's talk about let's say for a second in the VR environment. That's really huge with a lot of consumers nowadays, with our kids, our youth. VR is cool, and even myself, I will geek out on a VR headset, especially if you put me inside of a building and I can walk around inside of it. And you think about the stuff that we are delivering, we're putting into the hands of everybody out at the site. I mean, we have, oh gosh, Joey, just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that HP robot that goes out and prints layout. It prints layout at the site, but there's so many cool things that are happening. I think that we got to just continue to, I think we got to do better to teach it, to market it, to show the benefits of BIM, but also to show the flashy sides. You know what I mean? I mean, in all reality, BIM at the end of the day is the most important thing, as we all know, is going to be the eye. It's that information, right? I mean, that's the valuable data that's held within it. And once you get to a certain point in your career, I think you really start to understand that, and the value that model has certain value, but the information in that model is invaluable. It really is. And the level of depth of that information is
You're
invaluable.
hitting on all the sexy points of BIM and constructing technology in general. Ideal BIM, I keep calling you guys Ideal BIM because I like that play on words. Ideal.
Yeah, no, we can run with that too.
Ideal BIM, right? You guys are into all the fun stuff as well. Obviously, you've got to kick out drawings and documentation and all the boring stuff, right? But you also have all the fun stuff. I'm seeing scan to BIM and you're promoting digital twins and VR and all this stuff as well. Is how much of that is being more prevalent on your projects?
Well, we try to do something innovative on every project, whether it's using a new piece of software or new process or new tool. Excuse me. Most projects will spin them into VR, because getting them into VR right now is just it's press of a button, right? That's that big easy button. So you have the likes of Inkscape and the Revistos. You can just pump a model right over. You don't have to do a lot of post processing, and just wham bam, there it is. So that novelty is actually starting to wear off a bit. Everybody and their mother can do it out here, but the gaming engines, getting into Unreal and using Unity, we had a project where we had to create a website, and in that website we had to have the model of the new facility so that they could use it for fundraising and to explain the project, and so that people could navigate around and click on little pieces of information, and it explains a little bit about the project, so they don't have to keep telling everybody and everybody keep asking them questions. They're like, oh yeah, here's all the project, here's it's out there for everybody to see. And so we did a project like that, and we used Unity to develop it. And so you had this interactive model using WebGL online, and that was really cool. That was a great bit of success that we had.
That seems like a pretty cool workflow. I haven't used the Unity engine. I mean, Twin Motion's come around quite a bit recently with the inclusion now from Autodesk, but I think typically it was like outdated iframes, or using something like the model viewer, the large model viewer from Forge, and trying to make it work. But I don't know. The rendering still wasn't quite as cool. Like, I don't know. The gaming engine seems to hold a lot of promise.
Yeah, I think that's going to bring in a lot of interest, especially with graduates and kids growing up on Minecraft and Roblox and all of that. Like those skills transfer very easy into the BIM world, into the gaming engines. I think that's a lot of untapped potential, and we're going to see a lot of growth using Unreal and Unity. And I think I think like, isn't Revisto built on Unity or some version of it?
It's based on, I can't remember which engine it sits on, but yeah, it uses one of them because it does all of the rendering, all of the lighting is already baked in, which is why it's so fast.
Man,
you don't have to render everything.
It's crazy to see the technology that kids are coming up with and how fast they're getting into stuff. I'm 38 and I'm just now getting into like 3D printing and VR and stuff. I'm 10 years too late. My kids, on the other hand, they pick that thing up and just start walking around like it's nothing, like they've been doing it their whole lives. They went from playing Roblox into building 3D models on Tinkercad to 3D printing to using Fusion and playing with the Oculus headset like it was nothing. And here I am like tripping over myself trying to get it set up and figure this stuff out. The next generation of technology for construction, they're going to have some bright minds. When they're not playing Let's Go Pokemon or whatever, to kind of carry the torch.
Pokemon Go is awesome.
They have a lot of that here. You'll see people walking around with 3 or 4 phones in their hand, like on like a stick, and like playing all of them.
Yeah, that reminds me of my old office. There was some rare Pokemon that used to appear there, and it would just be like the Night of the Living Dead. You walk out, and there's just like all these zombies walking around. What's happened? What are they doing? They're all looking for this rare Pokemon. Okay.
You know what? It gets them outside. That's the big one. It gets people outside.
Heck yeah.
It was weird. Something
awesome.
I was going to say actually was, I think what you touched on. You talked about the technology and the gaming engine, but not the gamification, which is, I think that's the important part. It's not so much about whether it looks whizzy. I mean, yeah, we want to bring the sexy back to BIM and stuff, and that's true. We want it to look nice and be nice. But I think basically if you've got now AI going bananas and people using it happily using ChatGPT, as I know Jake does.
Oh yeah,
help him do his job. There's so much scope there to make things a lot easier, to gamify the whole experience, so it feels less like work and more like fun. I think that'll help a lot.
Oh, I completely agree. If you can make it more like a video game and I'm designing, throwing some pipes up somewhere, awesome. That'd be great. I love to play Call of Duty and, Fortnite and all that kind of stuff. And I see how, Revit or just different tools can be used, and how the gaming engines, how, it's funny, you go up some stairs and I'm looking at this building that I'm in and I'm like, this is actually put together pretty well. I wonder what they use to render this. You're getting shot at.
How they get the railings to come in so clean?
As long as it's not the spade. You don't get killed by the spade, do you? Oh, that's just like,
So, Jake, I have to ask you. Simon threw you under the bus there with ChatGPT. Jordan on our team he's pretty, up on it and plays around with it. I've, asked it a few questions, and I try to be technology forward, but again, I trip over my 2 feet. I have to ask you, what are some of the most useful things that you found AI, ChatGPT, to help you out with?
Yeah, so one thing that I like to do is take an RFP, copy the text out, dump it into ChatGPT, and start asking it questions about the document. What are the deliverables? What are the time frames? Just these bits of scope that we need to take out to estimate a job or a project. I found that very useful. Also, spinning it back around and drafting up proposals. It saves a lot of headache, and you don't have to necessarily use these boilerplate templates anymore that kind of like look the same and feel the same. Like, you could be a lot more flexible because it can just spit out that proposal or that scope of services or those deliverables a little bit quicker and easier. But yeah, you still need to manipulate it. You still need to change it. You need to put thought into it because it will give you, some bogus answers. And I see that a lot. Like, if you're just, if you want to use it to help you write a blog article or something like that. It just kind of scrapes the surface and takes some information, but you really got to drill down in, and you got to give it some prompts, and you got to get specific and start talking to it back and forth, because once it has that conversation going, it feeds off of that as well. And so you can really develop whatever it is that you're preparing, and refine it. And that's what you have to do. But yeah, definitely with proposals, scopes of services, I find that very helpful, and just creating documentation for the office, contracts, that helps, procedures.
Dude, I ended up, so I was doing some coding there for a while. Joey, you remember that? I was working on Workato, and Workato.
So brutal. Worst code ever.
Huh?
I said worst code ever.
Yeah. So Workato utilizes Ruby. And I had learned a little bit of like JSON coding, because really that's what Workato was using, is a lot of JSON. And I started seeing ChatGPT come out, and I'm trying to figure out how to connect different APIs together. I'm trying to figure out what I might need to write to, let's say the Autodesk Construction Cloud. If I wanted to connect to the Assets API endpoint, what would I need to write to? I literally went to ChatGPT and I asked if I wanted to connect to the Autodesk Construction Cloud Assets API in JSON format, how would I do that? That thing wrote me out the entire list of code. I mean, yes, it's probably right from their website, but it automatically went to it and grabbed everything there. And I compared it, and it was like line for line, everything that you would need to write out in JSON format to connect to it. Now, you obviously needed to put in information in terms of like your account ID and stuff like that, but it literally gave you the generic code written out that you could copy and paste and start to manipulate and go and write from. I mean, I think that in terms of also being able to analyze code, I mean, shoot, trying to put together these complex like codes, and then if you're missing a comma, it'll throw off it won't work, right? Being able to use something like that to go back and forth with and help figure out where's my problem. Because I mean, I could spend a couple days trying to go through code and figure out exactly what it is that's causing my issue. But if something like that can analyze it in a few seconds and tell me, oh, hey, you're missing this here. Oh man, that saved me so much time. It's insane.
So if you had a good compiler, it would have done that for you, man. Jeez. You've only told to save me a Google search
that's
and a
the
good
old
compiler.
part of me. I am not a coder, so I don't even know what a compiler is, dude. I'm all over here being old man about it.
No, I mean, that's what I find myself doing that a lot ever since, writing Lisp routines and whatnot, is, you're copying and pasting bits of code, sticking it together until you can figure out how it actually does go together. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of developers do that as well.
A little bit. Yeah.
I thought Lisp was dead.
No way.
But they brought it back.
Use
I'm Lisp now.
But I mean, we're also using, Dynamo, and ChatGPT helps solve some of those, writes some Python, gives you which nodes, gets you started with it. Of course, Dynamo scripts they're a bit clunky. They do work. Obviously, if you can get into the API and, do some C# or something, it'll come out with better results, a better solution. But all these scripts need to be custom for each project, it seems, all the time. And so you're always monkeying with them, trying to get them to work. And GPT's been helping to troubleshoot those. Also, just, we have our team. We have, offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, and India. And our team in India, they do a lot of production over there. They use the chatbot as well to troubleshoot Revit or to help write scripts, to do coding. So it's very prevalent, and our teams are using it across the board.
Do you know what I'm looking forward to, though? I'm looking forward to someone using one of these ChatGPT, whichever version they're at. I don't know. We'll give it a few more iterations, and then someone will rewrite a better version of Revit. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Something with
don't you know it?
multi-core
If they can start. I mean, we have generative design, right? But at the same time, you're giving it the parameters. There's really no, there's some intelligence in there, but at the same time, not really. If you start to give it the artificial intelligence, open up, let's say, a building database for however many projects have been done in the past few years, where they've succeeded, where they've failed, this project type. And you really start to give it like the parameters of the square footage, how many offices or whatever it's going to be. I mean, honestly, that in itself, if you think about it, would solve a lot of issues that we have with design and construction.
So the generative design engine Revit, not knocking it, but it is very limited. I think, like you're saying, if you have unlimited parameters, and it's very niche, right? But if you have unlimited parameters, it opens it up quite a bit. You use something like ChatGPT, and you say, use Dayton, Ohio county specs for mechanical engineering for and you specify occupancy, whatever, and it just gives you those iterations. Like you don't have to input any data. It just literally knows it, especially if you've got, Siri on your phone or whatever, and you're just talking to it like a lunatic.
Joey,
but sounds like the next iteration.
A while ago, when we got into smart cities and we started talking about, if somebody's looking at buying a building, eventually we want a database, right? To be able to search through for that person. And they say, I want this type of business, this kind of square space, what have you. And it'll essentially give them a list or tell them what these buildings are currently capable of, what the HVAC systems are rated at, what the flow rates are, how the current systems will actually, perform for their business, and what is the best investment for them without having to, totally rehab something or add to it, or what the better investment would be.
And that's something that I think is very powerful as well that you touched on, as it doesn't get mentioned much. It's the natural language ability of things like ChatGPT, which means it makes construction potentially much more inclusive. And you did mention something about someone, perhaps, for example, someone that is blind or can't see well, and you go, well, they're obviously not going to have anything to do with construction. Well, why is that? If they can talk, they can explain things and they can come up with something. So you can have people that would normally be excluded, who then can have some input.
Yes, sir.
It'd be interesting.
That is such a great use case. I mean, we're overlooking it, but in our day-to-days, but that means the world. Like that's amazing. You've suddenly opened construction up to possibilities up to somebody who hasn't had it. I've grown up with disabled siblings my whole life, so like giving other people an avenue who might have been counted out, that's a pretty huge one.
Yeah, we'll just think about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how to recover from something that heavy, but getting back to the ChatGPT side of things, I don't want to again bore everybody to death with ChatGPT, but a few things there. So Revit, the Forma or whatever integration is supposedly going to open up in May. That'll be huge. But there's another thing that we've been overlooking, and that's called SpaceMaker. And in the US, we don't have access to it yet. I think that'll be happening soon, hopefully. But tying in something like that generative design engine for buildings into, again, a GIS like David was mentioning, as well as integrating BIM, existing systems, all this sort of stuff, it starts to really piece together the things that we've always, the shining star, right? The things we wanted to get to with smart cities, being able to not just know for a demographic standpoint, where we should put the next Best Buy or Bass Pro Shop or what have you, but also to know what's the lowest cost, what's the best use and design case, what types of things should we put in this store based off of, psychographics. We always argue against, big data, but big data already exists. Now somebody needs to start culminating those things and finding a way to piece it all together. And it seems like something like an AI engine is probably the perfect thing. And then onto the other part, the Dynamo side of things, I agree with you. They are clunky. They can solve amazing problems, but at the end of the day, they can also destroy your model. So never work on an active model. But also, the Revit API is so much cleaner. And if there is something out there that you want to do in Revit, somebody else has probably already thought of it. and it's for free on GitHub. Give it a try.
Yeah, that's right. What I was hoping to look forward to this ChatGPT is somehow being able to integrate ChatGPT or an AI model like that into the actual BIM model, so that, for example, you could say, please, extract out the quantity of the beams or the volume of the concrete inside of it. And it just gives you the value back. So you can start to interrogate these models with, prompts or with cues, instead of having to go through and set up the schedule and then make sure it's all in there and then format it all correctly. Like, if you could just ask back, what's the total volume of the concrete slabs for floor or level 6 of the project, and it just gives it back. That'd be great.
Really smart too, because it's the natural language plus semantic data. So it's data that knows what it is, or it knows what other data is, and it's not just just stuff. It actually knows, and it starts to be able to piece it together.
Oh my gosh, you guys think on another level. This is what it's like to be 12 hours ahead.
So you think about something like that, and then you start connecting it with the other, let's talk about the other web hosted APIs out there, such as a weather channel, right? And we're going to go ahead. We're planning on pouring this week. It's going to look ahead to the weather and actually go ahead and look back and maybe adjust your overall schedule based on.
Don't trust the weather, Dave. Don't trust the weather. Come on, man. They're wrong 95% of the time. Maybe maybe they take that into account somehow.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, we talk about Alice a lot, right, Joe? And that's, generative construction. And it really looks at the overall construction project, analyzes the schedule, thinks about, what could potentially go wrong, how you can avoid potential risks, or if things happen, how, what you can do to get back on schedule, what things you can go ahead and plan to do to catch up or get ahead, what items, like let's say it is raining or it's snowing, what things can you do inside of the building or different places of the site while you're waiting on that area, essentially unleashing intelligence onto our project to tell us, hey, this has come up, this is an issue, how do we adjust? Or what overall, because somebody's got to take a step back and somebody's got to make a decision that next day. Work's got to get done. They've got to say, let's go ahead and do this. Why not use something overnight to analyze all that, whether it's pictures, it's images, it's recent projects we've done, it's the data itself and different endpoints that it can reach out to tell you, what your best day is going to be spent doing this and accomplishing these tasks on the schedule.
Man, that's like one step away from like your robot overlords telling you what you have to do for the day, man. Like it's very Skylab. What's the Terminator?
Skylab, right?
Yeah, Skylab. Yeah.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords.
This is on record.
They're listening. Don't worry.
No, I mean, going back to what you were saying, it's a very, very good point, especially with weather. Here in Hong Kong, we have adverse weather conditions. We have just torrential rain. They call it, I believe, black rain, where that will shut down your project site. They also have typhoons, which will shut down your project site for days on end. And so,
just to be clear, the rain isn't black in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's right.
It's just a lot.
It's just a lot. It just blacks everything out.
Yeah, having that AI, that assistance, or that brainstorm, helping you secure the site, making the site safe, shut it down. All that has great potential, and the bots could certainly help us. Another item that I would like to see more AI on is, like, for example, you're making a drawing, you're tagging all your doors, and then it being able to read the drawing and saying, like, oh, well, you've tagged all these other doors on this drawing, but this door is not tagged. And it being able to identify and also potentially fixing those items. I see a big potential for that for QA/QC with AI in the future.
Not even being able to OCR essentially the model and see that you don't have this labeled as a door type family, but it is clearly a door. And for whatever reason you had it, as a non-door type family, but it still picks it up, or you just, neglected to select that door type of family.
And we could gamify it, and we could make it clippy, and you could say, "Hey, it looks like you're building a building. It looks like you want a door," which would be nice.
That's coming. That's coming. That's
we'll
coming.
see that.
Sure, Clippy. We'll Bimmy, right? We'll call him Bimmy.
I'm doing it. You've got the AI thing with Microsoft, haven't you? What's it called? Pilot or something? What's it called? There's an AI thing for Microsoft that comes with Office.
Cortana?
Not Cortana, but it's like it was being rolled out as this. It's like, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like Copilot or something. They're calling it. Have you heard of that?
Now it's going to be very. Its feelings are hurt that you didn't call it out by name. So your corporate overlords aren't going to be happy. Yeah, it is Copilot, by the way.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah, there you go. But not used it. I haven't used it, and ChatGPT officially is geo-blocked in Hong Kong, so you need a VPN or something to actually use it here.
Yeah, we are using it illegally.
Well, it's not illegal,
right?
It's not illegal. It's just that OpenAI haven't rolled it out here. That's all, and so we have to use it by another method.
Tap twice if I need to edit this out.
It's not illegal, I don't think.
All right. But to ask you guys, so to kind of bring this in, I feel like this has been a great episode. And again, thank you guys so much for jumping on with us. If we could ask you guys, where do you what is your wish list for BIM? What do you see in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years, or where do you wish that we could be with BIM?
And the answer can't be give us all the projects.
I wish there was no bloody BIM. No more BIM. I'm sick of it. That'd be nice. Well, to be fair though, we shouldn't really need BIM managers. We should just need people that know what they're doing, and we don't need this separate team of BIM managers and consultants. So we make our money off the fact that people don't really want to know this stuff. But if you have, for the examples we've made about kind of opening the field, lowering the threshold to entry for people because of ChatGPT and things that do more for you, so that they take the drudgery out of it, then you can have a bit more fun, be a bit more creative. And then at the same time, you get more people into the industry from different backgrounds. That's what we need. We don't just, you've got the traditional professions where you start off, you go through school and you become an engineer or you become an architect. And those are fine. And you don't need architects and you don't need engineers. But we also need people that really understand, for example, acoustic technicians and stuff that understand the effects of acoustics on buildings. And we need people that know all these some quite specific things. And that's not covered in the architecture schools or the engineering schools. You need to then go and specialize. And I'd like to see more people that have like a physics background, or I don't know, any background is now relevant, because you just sort of squish it all together and then, okay, let's see what happens. We get new combinations.
Yeah, even with green buildings, if you have a degree in biology, man, come on.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely good
how to filter that water and grow some plants.
Yeah, you understand why your green roof isn't growing. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, you understand the materials that are inside of your wire, and you can only use certain materials on your wire because it doesn't meet your, LEED whatever certifications, and now you need, more economical or energy efficient. Like, there's a lot of room for different avenues in here, inside of the BIM space, and in construction in general. We just think of construction as, Joe's got to swing a hammer today, or he's working the jackhammer. We don't actually think about the math and the science that goes into it. There are framers that know more about geometry than I ever will. Do you know a land surveyor lives in geometry? When they're talking in calculus, they're talking tangents and curves. I can't do that crap to save my life today. I'm pulling out the old calculator.
Oh yeah. Shoot, Joe, one of the guys that we met, this guy, he was a plumber, and this guy was a journeyman plumber, and he hopped into Revit, and he taught himself Dynamo, and
I know you're talking about, yeah.
As he's going and drawing pipe, and we've talked about this a few times, but this guy, he's a journeyman plumber, and he jumps into Revit, does Dynamo, and has it create a trench, essentially create a topo surface so far underneath the pipe as he draws it around.
Not only did it create a topo surface based off of the Civil 3D file and where he laid the pipe, it actually snapped points, did all of the geometry, created, the tins, the triangles and everything.
Polyline, everything.
Gave him a setback distance of how far he can dig out, how wide his trench needs to be. And he did it all in Dynamo, like the first iteration of Dynamo for Revit that came out where it was a standalone application. And when we asked to interview him, he's like, man, I don't want to do this. I'm just a plumber. I was like, whoa. Yeah.
But it's great how when that experience starts to translate over. I mean, that's a huge thing. We give a lot of these guys credit when they're coming up and, they know how to design in Revit, they know how to push buttons, but the overall experience is the journeyman that's retiring. Anybody that's getting out, that's actually physically done this with their hands, knows how this goes together. We need that experience going back. I know, a lot of them will go into the trade schools. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of them haven't even been going back. Like, they're not returning to teach. They're just retiring out. And it's like we're losing that knowledge. And I think, unfortunately, without something like, AI or some kind of database that we can reach back to, we're going to have that huge gap.
Pay them an hourly wage, like a ridiculously high hourly wage, to sit in front of the computer and just chat with ChatGPT so we can record and know how to do this stuff to the next generation.
But guys, thank you so much for jumping on an episode with us. Before we go, I realized that we did a little bit of background, but we didn't really talk about you guys as a company. Do you want to take a minute to tell our listeners about yourselves, and then
Jake would love this. This is
yeah.
what he lives for. This
Oh yeah. So just a little shameless plug, right? So we're a BIM consultancy, and really what we focus on is the day-to-day BIM of projects, and mostly for contractors, subcontractors. We just really focus on BIM management, modeling, and coordination of large projects, but really projects of any size. And we have our team here in Hong Kong, a great team. They're out on site every day, coordinating, working out the projects. And then we have our team in India, which is about 100 man strong now. And they're doing production work, building models, clash analysis, writing scripts, producing drawings, doing visualization, and supporting our teams who are out on site, delivering these projects, working with the contractors or working in engineers' offices or designers' offices. And we also do a bit of outsourcing for the rest of the world with our India team, for the UK, for the US, for Australia.
Awesome. So you guys got a pretty large footprint, and you've got a lot of experience to talk through. I just want to thank you guys for coming on. I know that I want to have you guys on again. I feel like you guys have a wealth of knowledge within not only just BIM itself, but the construction industry and how BIM ties with that. And that is a big part of our podcast. It's a big thing of what we like to talk about is, the different parts of BIM, how it can be integrated, how it can be used. So I just want to appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us on an episode. And I look forward to having you guys on again in the future.
And not only that, you fit the culture of a true BIMaholic. You are drinking at 9 a.m., which is perfect.
No, again, thanks for having us, and I hope next time we can be a bit more pointed with a topic or a solution. I know today was a bit general, some banter back and forth and poking fun, but we had a really good conversation, and definitely looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, these are the fun conversations. Well, thank you all, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.